Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I am your host, Eric Smith. Today, I'm talking about The Rising, more selected scenes from the end of the world by Brian Keene. This is from Death's Head Press. It is a short story collection of stories set in the world of Brian Keene's The Rising, a zombie apocalypse. That's your nutshell, and for the too long didn't watch crowd, I just finished this book before I started recording my videos for the evening. So I have not even rated it on Goodreads yet. And I'm falling at 3.5. I have not decided yet when I go to Goodreads if I'm going to bump that up to a 4 or bump it down to a 3. But I'm solidly at 3.5. I liked it. Not sure I can say I really liked it. And definitely, I'm not going to say I loved it. It's good Brian Keene zombie stuff. Now, first of all, we had The Rising, Brian Keene's first novel, 2003. And that led to the sequel, City of the Dead. And then there's some other stuff, The Rising Deliverance, I believe. I have most, if not all of it, up on the shelf over there. And The Rising Selected Scenes from the End of the World, which is a bunch of short stories taking place in the world of The Rising. This book came about because Christopher Triana had a dog named Bear, who was diagnosed with cancer, and basically a bunch of horror people, and possibly non-horror people, but my circles are horror people, took up arms and started raising funds for Bear's treatment. And so Brian Keene basically sold short stories. You could, I don't remember what the cost was, but he would contact you, get your name, information about your life, where you're from and everything, and you would be a character, and your whatever you wanted incorporated from your life would be in a story set in The Rising. And so all but one of the stories in here are from that. There's an introduction where Brian Keene talks about the fact that before The Rising was published, let me see if I can find exactly what he says. So, something about... he says, I began working on The Rising in 1998, but it wasn't published in hardcover until 2003 and in paperback in 2004. For several years in between, I thought I'd never sell it, so I cannibalized the novel twice for short story material. And so the first story in here, even though it's not one of those he sold to people, the way I say that makes it sound weird, but hopefully you understand what people paid for their money to go to treat the dog Bear, and for that payment they are characters in these stories. But anyway, the first story in here, which is called Waiting for Infinity, is essentially part of The Rising. It's one of my favorite scenes in the novel The Rising. I assume because it's a short story and has to stand on its own that there's some tweaks to it. I can't confirm that, though, because I didn't pull The Rising off the shelf and compare. But, yes, Waiting for Infinity is the only story in here that doesn't have real people. Well, actually, I don't know. Some of the characters might be named after real people, but weren't part of this Bear charity thing. And one of the things I should point out is that Anthrax drummer Charlie Benante, not sure if that's how you pronounce his name, has done a bunch of pictures. I'm not going to show you any because they're spoilery for the stories. But yes, there are a bunch of color pictures in here. And the cover artist also has a couple sketches in here. His name is something. Wes Benscoter. Not sure about the pronunciation. You can see his name right there. All right. So anyway, bunch of stories, much like The Rising selected scenes from the end of the world. This covers the entirety of the Rising zombie apocalypse from beginning to end. If you don't know what the ending is, read more Brian Keene. So after that first story, once we get into the people stories, the first story is Sophie's Final Choice, and this is from the POV of a dog. A lovely little doggy, which makes it one of my favorites. I can't really talk too much about these different stories without giving anything away. Always the problem I have with short stories. Let's move on. Body talk. We have a character. He's up on his balcony. It's the zombie apocalypse, and he's always been able to read people, and but he can't, watch somebody for an amount of time and then be able to tell you everything about them. That kind of guy, but he can't figure out the zombies. That's our setup. Plan D, possibly my least favorite. It's basically a guy during the zombie apocalypse, and we see him going through Plan A. Oh, this is Plan A, and this is what I'm going to do. Up to Plan D. I felt that the ending is a little disappointing, a little blah. Plan D. It's still fine, and Plans A through C are interesting. Just felt a little let down by the ending. Bunker Hill Revisited is, I believe... Again, very, very hard to talk about these. And this is the one, there's a family in a church steeple. I believe it's a church steeple in Bunker Hill, Illinois. And I really can't say anything about it because it's very short and I would give things away. Nembrodo. I don't know how to say it. Nembrodo. There's some Easter eggs, character Easter eggs. Brian Keene likes lots of crossover stuff in his books. And so we've got a little bit of that here. This is about a guy surviving in a warehouse and something that happens. I can't say. Into the Fire. I like Into the Fire. It's a family zombie apocalypse trying to get from one place to the other in the middle of the desert. They run out of gas. Things happen, and this is the story that changes where we're at within this Brian Keene, The Rising zombie apocalypse. This is the story where it's going to... Hopefully this isn't too spoilery. If you're very familiar with Brian Keene's oeuvre, then you'll understand what I'm talking about. But this is the story that is going to move things to the next phase. So that's Into the Fire. Last Embrace, I believe, is the one. Let's just double check. Nope, I'm missing something. Or maybe I'm not. Something is off here. Into the Fire. That's New Mexico. Wasted Time. Wasted Time is not in the table of contents. That's what was throwing me off. So Wasted Time takes place in Coyote Bob's Roadhouse Casino, and it's about a couple riding out the apocalypse, and essentially they, as far as their personal lives go, they met in high school, dated in high school, he joined the military. She ended up getting married. He ended up getting married, having kids, reconnected on Facebook. Excuse me. Decided to stay friends. Eventually find out that they have both separated from their significant others and decide to get together, become a couple, they get married. And now it's the zombie apocalypse, and things are happening, and phases are shifting. Then we move on to Last Embrace, Curtain Call, Part 1. This isn't a spoiler, because it's the first 2 words of the story. The character in this one is Mother Horror herself, Sadie Hartman. And it is a Part 1 because Sadie Hartman is with a gentleman named Jeremy, but they split up, and we follow Sadie and see what happens with her. After that is Gore Hog, Curtain Call Part 2, which is us now following the other character, Jeremy. Things happen, phases are shifting. That's all I can say about that. And then Watching It Burn is the last story. And nope, that's Gore Hog Part 2. And let's just, this is a bit of a downer. And it is the final phase, I suppose. So we have a person who has survived up to this point, the zombie apocalypse, but phases have changed, and I really can't say much. It's a very short one. Oddly, the table of contents says Watching It Burn starts on page 71, Art Gallery, page 79. So Watch It Burn does start on page 71, but the Art Gallery starts on page, interesting, is in between pages 58 and 59. Right in the middle of a story, between pages 58 and 59, is the Art Gallery. So the About the Author is technically on page 75, whereas this says it's on page 121. That's all neither here nor there. It's just something I happen to notice. Anyway, so those are the stories. And they're all enjoyable. As I said, the one, Plan D, the ending fell flat for me. They're all just snippets of what's going on during the Rising and moving into the other phases. I enjoy the zombies in the Rising, and if you've never read any of the Rising books, they're not typical slow George Romero zombies. They are not fast Zack Snyder Dawn of the Dead remake zombies. They are not 28 Days Later not zombies. The closest thing I can think of, and this is not a perfect comparison, but the thing they would most remind me of in the movies that I have seen is the zombies from Return of the Living Dead. So enjoyable stories. It was a very quick read. And if you're a big fan of The Rising, you're going to want to read this. And if you want to, well, unfortunately, Bear has passed. But that's no reason not to pick up the book. I don't know what's happening with proceeds or anything. I don't know what the proceeds for the book itself were. If those were going to Bear or just the money from the people that bought the stories. Anyway. It's 3.5 out of 5 stars for me. I can't go higher than that because of how much I like The Rising and City of the Living Dead. This, to me, does not meet that level, and so I can't rate it the same as I would rate those. 3.5. I liked it. Didn't love it. The Rising, More Selected Scenes from the End of the World by Brian Keene from Death's Head Press. Good zombie fiction, good Rising fiction, good Brian Keene fiction. Check it out. And some cool illustrations that I can't show you because of spoilers. There you go. All right. Question for the video. Have you read any of the Rising books? We talked about zombies in, I think the last one. Or not the last review. One of the reading remembrances from a few weeks back. I think we talked about zombie stuff. I know one person who I think they said have never a few people have already said they've never read The Rising or any zombie books at all. But for the rest of you, have you read any of the Rising books? What do you think? As I already said, I'm a huge, huge fan. It's the first thing I ever read by Brian Keene, and I absolutely loved it. It was actually the first book we did back during the Horror Mall days and the group that we had on there, and we had a book club, and every month we would choose a book, read it, discuss it, and then for most of them we had the author on. We did not get Brian Keene, but the first book was The Rising. I believe only one person in the entire group was not a fan of it. I'm not going to get into some of that stuff, but it was the second or possibly the second time, maybe the third time that I read it was for the group. And as I said, I really, really love how the zombies are in these stories, and the fact that it's not just humans, but basically anything that dies. And so yeah, I'm definitely a fan. I think there might be a Rising book that I have not read yet. I'd actually have to look more closely. But I do believe there's one I haven't read yet, but I do own it. Huge fan of the series. I've enjoyed both more selected scenes from the End of the World and more selected scenes from the End of the World. He also did this with Earthworm Gods, the short stories that take place. Yeah, I understand that a lot of people, maybe I shouldn't say a lot, I don't know. It has been mentioned by Mr. Keene that there are people that just want him to write zombie stuff, write the Rising stuff. As much as I love it, I'm not one of those people. I want to see him basically write whatever he wants, but, write different things. If he wanted to just write the Rising, I wouldn't complain about it. I might get bored with it. I'm not a fan of seeing an author do the same thing over and over and over and over again. Some people seem to just want that thing. I don't, but I'm not going to complain about getting more stuff in the Rising universe. And, I'd rather an author write it because they're inspired to, not just because people are demanding it. But what are your thoughts? Have you read any of the Rising books? What did you think of them? Let me know in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. It's post spoiler warning. We try to be polite here at the Low Budget Review Show. Please like, share, and subscribe. All the usual YouTube stuff. If you care to follow me on other social media, I'll have links for my Instagram and Bluesky in the description below. That's all I've got for you. This has been the Low Budget Review Show. I have been Eric Smith, and until next time, read more books.